The wind came howling off the high plains, like it had a bone to pick with every living thing, rattling the shutters of the ranch house, and carrying with it the sharp smell of snow and pine. Luke Callahan paused at the window with his coffee gone cold in his hand. Christmas Eve had a way of sneaking up on a man out here, especially one who worked sunup to sundown and slept too tired to dream. He had not planned on company, not the human kind anyway. Yet something in the pit of his gut told him this night was fixing to change him. Outside the yard gate, a small shape stood stubborn against the wind, boots too big and coat too thin, a red scarf wrapped twice around a narrow neck. Luke squinted, thinking at first it was a trick of snow and shadow. Then the gate creaked open and the shape moved closer. A child, alone, on his ranch, on Christmas Eve. Luke set his mug down and reached for his hat. Heart thumping like hooves on frozen ground, the little girl looked up at him with eyes too old for her face, clutching a folded piece of paper in mittened hands. She did not cry or whine, she just swallowed and said, "Sir, are you Santa?" The words hit Luke harder than any winter gale. He knelt down, beard stubble itching, and said, "No ma'am, I reckon I am not. But you look froze through and welcome here all the same." She nodded, as if that answer had been expected all along. "Mama said Santa listens better near ranches," she said. Then she held out the paper. Luke took it careful, like it might bite. The paper was creased and smudged with pencil marks. At the top, in crooked letters, were the words, "Dear Santa." Luke felt something tighten in his chest. He had no name for inside by the fire. The girl thawed and talked in fits and starts. Her name was Ellie Mae, and she lived down the ridge with her mama. A widow, she added, quick, as if that explained everything. Luke read the letter while she warmed her hands. It did not ask for toys or sweets. It asked for a new papa, someone kind who would not leave mama crying at night. Luke stared at the flames until they blurred. When Luke rode Ellie Mae home, the snow had started proper, soft and steady. Pine Ridge Ranch sat quiet under white cover, lantern light glowing in the window. The woman who opened the door was worn but straight-backed, eyes wary yet gentle. "Sarah Whitmore," she said. "Thank you for bringing my girl home." Luke tipped his hat and felt like a greenhorn all over again. Sarah invited him in, out of the storm. Coffee was poured, apologies exchanged. Ellie Mae watched them like she was studying a school lesson. Sarah explained about the letter with cheeks flushed. "I told her Santa helps in his own way." Luke nodded, words failing him. He had faced stampedes and droughts without blinking, yet this small kitchen and this quiet woman had him rattled. When Luke finally rode back into the snow, the stars were sharp as nails in the sky. The letter burned in his mind, and so did Sarah's tired smile. He had spent years telling himself he was fine alone, that a man like him had no call to dream of family. But Christmas has a way of proving a man wrong, and somewhere between the ridge and his gate, Luke Callahan felt a promise take root, one that would not be ignored. Christmas morning broke pale and quiet over the plains, snow lying smooth as fresh linen. Luke Callahan stood in his barn doorway, watching his breath cloud the air. Yet his thoughts were not on cattle or weather. They were on a little girl with solemn eyes, and a letter that asked for more than toys. He saddled his horse with a restlessness he had not felt in years, telling himself he was only riding fence, though his reins somehow turned toward Pine Ridge Ranch. All the same, Sarah Whitmore was splitting kindling when Luke rode up. Her sleeves rolled, hair pinned loose and practical. She looked surprised, then guarded, but she did not send him away. Ellie Mae came running from the house, laughter bright as bells. Luke dismounted and felt awkward under her hug. Sarah invited him in for Christmas coffee. It was not much of a celebration, she said, but it was warm. Luke said warm counted for a lot, especially in winter. They talked careful at first, about snowpack and feed prices, about how long Luke had worked his land, and how long Sarah had been alone on hers. She spoke of her husband Thomas, who had died of fever 3 winters back, her voice steady but eyes distant. Luke listened without fixing or filling the silence. Something she seemed to notice, something that softened her posture. Ellie Mae played on the floor, humming carols, the air between them growing less tight with every passing minute. When Luke left, he found Ellie Mae had tucked a small pine cone into his coat pocket. "For luck," she said. Luke carried it back to his ranch like it was gold. The days that followed found him riding over more often, sometimes with an excuse, and sometimes with none at all. He fixed a broken hinge, hauled hay, shared supper. Sarah resisted at first, pride standing tall. But winter is a hard negotiator, and Luke was steady as the ground beneath her feet. By New Year the snow lay deep, and the world had settled into a hush. Luke brought a small spruce one evening, cut from his north pasture. Ellie Mae clapped her hands and danced circles while Sarah protested it was too much trouble. Yet she smiled when Luke set the tree by the window. They strung popcorn and tied scraps of ribbon, laughter warming the room more than the stove ever could. Luke watched Sarah in the lamplight and felt the truth press in on him, slow and certain that night, after Ellie Mae was tucked into bed. Luke lingered by the tree, pine scent sharp and clean. Sarah stood across from him, twisting her hands. He spoke plain as he knew how, said he had not come courting, not at first. But somewhere between mending fences and sharing meals he had started to hope. Sarah's breath caught. She spoke of fear, of loss, of a child who had already lost too much. Luke answered that he was not promising perfection, only presence. The kind that stays days past heavy with unsaid words, yet nothing pulled apart. If anything, the bond grew stronger. Luke taught Ellie Mae to ride a gentle mare. Sarah watched from the porch with a hand over her heart. Townsfolk noticed. Whispers traveled like wind through dry grass, some kind and some not. Sarah faced them all with quiet resolve. Luke rode at her side whenever he could, his loyalty a shield she had forgotten she needed. On a clear evening just before 12th night, Luke stood beneath the stars. Decision settled firm inside him. He knew the risk, knew the ache of loving what could be lost, yet he also knew the deeper ache of walking away. Inside Pine Ridge Ranch, Ellie Mae knelt by her bed, whispering her prayer to Santa. Outside, Luke Callahan tipped his hat to the sky, ready at last to ask a question that would change all their lives. The night before Christmas returned like a familiar hymn. Slow and full of memory, snow fell gentle as if the sky itself was listening. Luke Callahan rode to Pine Ridge Ranch, with his heart pounding harder than it ever had in a stampede. Tucked in his coat pocket was a small velvet box he had bought in town, with hands that shook like a boy's. The house glowed warm against the dark, and inside Ellie Mae was busy placing the last popcorn strand on the spruce tree. Her cheeks flushed with purpose and hope. Sarah stood by the stove, stirring stew, the lamplight catching in her hair. When she saw Luke at the door, she smiled, then hesitated, as if she sensed the weight of what he carried with him. Supper passed quiet but easy, shared looks saying more than words dared. Ellie Mae finished eating and announced it was time for Santa business. She pulled Luke toward the tree and told him to sit. Sarah laughed softly, shaking her head, but she did not stop the child. Something in her eyes, already shining bright and wet. Ellie Mae cleared her throat and said she had written Santa again. She read slow and careful. Said, "Dear Santa, thank you for listening. Mama smiles more now. Luke helps with the hard things and stays. If you think it is right, please let him be my new papa." The room went still. The fire crackled loud in the hush. Luke felt his chest ache open wide. He looked at Sarah, saw fear and longing tangled together, and knew this was the moment that asked for courage more than strength. Luke stood and reached into his pocket, his voice rough but steady. He said he could not promise to be perfect, but he could promise to be there every morning and every night, to teach Ellie Mae right from wrong, to stand with Sarah when the world turned hard. He knelt by the tree and opened the box. The ring caught the firelight like a star. He asked Sarah Whitmore if she would marry him and let him build a family with her, not just for Christmas but for all the ordinary days to come. Sarah covered her mouth, tears spilling free, the years of holding herself together, finally loosening. She spoke of her vows once made and broken by fate, of her fear of trusting happiness again. Luke waited, patient as stone. Ellie Mae slipped her small hand into Sarah's, squeezing. "Mama," she whispered, "he stays." That was all it took. Sarah nodded through tears and said yes, her voice trembling but true. Luke slid the ring on her finger and pulled her into an embrace that felt like coming home. Ellie Mae danced around them laughing, declaring Santa the best listener in the world. Outside the wind softened as if even it approved. They sang carols off-key and shared stew by the fire, the tree glowing bright. Later Luke stepped outside alone for a moment, tipping his hat to the stars, thinking of all the lonely nights that had led him here. He returned inside to find Sarah resting her head on his shoulder and Ellie Mae asleep between them. Peace settling deep in Shrewinter, passed slower after that, but warmer too. The wedding was small and held beneath the same spruce tree come spring. Townsfolk gathered with cautious smiles that turned genuine when they saw the way Luke looked at his bride and her child. Ellie Mae took Callahan as her name with fierce pride, calling Luke Papa from the first day without stumbling. The ranchers joined, and so did the lives. Work was still hard and losses still came, yet none of it was faced alone any more years. Later, folks would say it all began with a letter to Santa and a knock on a ranch gate. Luke would smile at that, and Sarah would squeeze his hand, knowing the truth ran deeper. It was kindness answered with courage, love chosen again after loss, and a little girl who believed hard enough to change 3 lives. Every Christmas Eve they trimmed the tree together, and Luke would look at his family and thank the quiet winter night that taught him a man could be remade by love, one promise at a time.